And as an Israeli concerned about my country's future, I think that we have to change this direction. And so the book follows up with 3 basic recommendations for Israel's future. Those recommendations are that we have to understand that pursuing peace is as important as itself and as an end in itself. It is also a means of allowing Israel to exit the West Bank quagmire for the sake of Israel's own survival, that we have to carry out what I call a divorce made in heaven between state and religion, and we have to guarantee that while Israel continues to be a Jewish state, that it affords full equality for its Arab minority.
All right, but Israel withdrawing from the entirety of the West Bank just isn't going to happen, is it? It's one thing removing settlements from Gaza, which were generally small, very self-contained. In the West Bank, you have big towns that have been there now for decades. How can that possibly happen? And in fact, is that what you're actually suggesting?
Well, first of all, I'm not laying down the precise borders which have been negotiated and will be negotiated again. One thing you have to understand in that respect is that the largest West Bank settlements are, by and large, the ones that are very closest to the old borders. That's why previous negotiations, including the Abbas-Olmert negotiations, could talk about territorial trades of a very small amount of land that would leave the majority of the settlements in Israeli hands. But overall rule of the West Bank, with settlements scattered throughout the West Bank, has a negative effect on Israel, on its security. Israel's military is spending a tremendous amount of resources on defending settlements rather than the wider concerns of Israeli security. It puts the government in the position of confronting a radical group which is often violating the law, but doing so in a territory which is more difficult for the government to control. That has a negative effect on basic legal institutions within the state itself. So, yes, some of the settlements are going to have to be evacuated. It will be a painful thing for Israel. I'm not underestimating that. But getting out of quagmires is difficult. Israel is not the first country to confront the problem that you got into something that is more difficult to get out of. That's not a reason for continuing a disastrous policy.
All right, let me bring in the panel here. Andrea, a disastrous policy? Continued occupation of the West Bank?
Oh, he knows the subject much better than I do. I think we have differing opinions. What I want to know is, do a majority of Israelis, we were talking about this on a show that I'm on at 5 o'clock yesterday, it actually came up, and Bob Beckel brought up that the Israelis don't like Netanyahu. Is that true?
Well, you know, I always say, people ask me what the Israelis think. I've never met the Israelis. I've met many, many Israelis. I think that there's a lot of distrust of Netanyahu. There was a word that was invented in Hebrew, which means he can be pressured, which was invented specifically for Netanyahu. And when Netanyahu ran in 1999, they used to call him Bibi Zig, Bibi Zag, for his... you know, he was the most famous flip-flopper in Israeli politics. So there's a deep distrust of where he's going. And actually his position on the West Bank is one of the things that's generated this mistrust, because on the one hand, he says that he's in favor of a two-state solution, but the actual policies he's carrying out on the ground are ones that are clearly intended to prevent that from happening. Right. So you have a strong feeling of somebody who is, you know, saying different things to different audiences, and you don't know what he's really going to end up doing.
Is that why Sarkozy said what he said on the hot mic, that he's a liar?
Listen, I can't read Sarkozy's mind, but it would seem like...
I'm asking you for your opinion.
I would guess that that's why he said it. I would also tell you that a couple of times in the last couple of years, Merkel has made public, the German chancellor has made public that she's called up Netanyahu to dress him down for not telling her the truth. And I want to explain here that for the German chancellor to have a falling out with the Israeli prime minister is a much rarer and more serious thing than an argument between the American president and the Israeli prime minister. For obvious historical reasons, the Germans really don't leave any daylight between them and themselves and Israel. And I think that there's good reasons that they don't do that. But she simply felt that she had been shall we say politely, misled too many times by Netanyahu.